Thank you all for joining us to close this chapter we're writing as a community for the future of the airport. It's important to emphasize the phrase or the word community as part of that equation. This commission consisted of 24 people from all different walks of life, both sides of state line, men and women, people who were here when this airport was built, and some who weren't. I want to thank each of them for investing a tremendous amount of time and energy and their space into this endeavor. These are a group of bi-state citizens who came together, met bi-weekly, hours at a time, read tomes of information and material, studied an airport in ways that I've never had the opportunity to study an airport, and did it for no pay, and probably at the end of the day, not a whole lot of thanks from people outside of the circle. But it was important for them to come together to devote that time to help us resolve and examine an extremely important civic task. I can't thank them enough. This is what we expect our citizens to do. They've done it and done it well. This is how people participate in their government, and they have participated well. And this city owes them a debt of thanks. Regardless of whether you agree or disagree with their conclusions, you certainly cannot disagree with their effort and the amount of time they spent to try to do something worthwhile. So I thank you. During the times that they met as a in public hearings, listening to perspectives and ideas and data, they had to battle a lot of misinformation. Many people said that the money would be better spent instead of airports on schools or roads, and I certainly can't deny that we need more money for our schools and roads, but it's simply not that simple. The large task of this commission ended up being to lay out the facts. And I hope that as a result of what they've done, people now realize that the money generated from airport operations stays in airport operations, and the money to do anything at the airport will come from those funds. You had no small task in learning about what the airport operations were about, discussing all the facts, looking at the data, not just hyperbole, then synthesizing that work and that effort into something that people who hadn't spent a year studying the airport could understand. And that's not a simple task. And I think that you did a truly great job. I am not privy to everything yet, and I appreciate that, but from everything that I have learned in the last couple of days, you did your task extremely well. This analysis is going to be extremely helpful to council and to the city moving forward. And I want to just repeat what the task was. At the beginning and at the end, I asked the group to answer two basic questions. One, is Kansas City International Airport, as it is currently configured, the best airport for residents and visitors to Kansas City? And if not, what are the options for an airport that will serve the region for future generations? And today we're going to find out what these 24 folks think and have decided to present to us. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to the co-chairs of this task, Dave Fowler and Bob Berkebile, to give us an overview of the process the group has gone through, and then to tell us all what they recommend. Bob is a principal of BNIM, and Dave is now a retired KPMG executive working on his second career as a stand-up comedian. Bob and Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Mayor, on behalf of all of my colleagues, we thank you for the opportunity to serve the community, and we thank you especially for assembling this really diverse group of citizens who stepped up and met the challenge that you offered. Thanks also to your staff, Starting with Jay, I think we expected a lot more of them than they'd ever imagined, and we appreciate all of them, way far too many to name to make this possible. And thanks to the community who have weighed in and become really clear with us that they care about the major assets of this community, starting with the airport. When we started a year ago, there was a lot of uncertainty and misunderstanding about what the airport really is, who's in charge, what is required, who's going to pay, and all of those things. And part of that was the airlines who felt they really hadn't had a voice. And so this process has enlarged that dialogue. Understandably, a year ago, there was a lot of uncertainty and diversity among us, a lot of opinions about what should be done at the airport. But you really asked us those two questions. And we, if I can read this, expanded that to have an operating plan, which was our mission statement. We will, after reviewing appropriate relevant facts and consulting with key stakeholders, we'll make a recommendation as to the optimal configuration for the Kansas City International Airport, which best serves the vision and long-term success of its private and business residents and visitors from the standpoint of economic impact, affordability and business creation, flexibility, adaptability and convenience, and safety, security, and environmental performance. So Dave is going to try to outline a little bit of what we studied over the last year. Thank you.
The mayor did a good job outlining some of the things we've done, but being a CPA, I guess I want to just put a few stats on it, Mayor, if I may. We have been at this for about a year, and over that time we had approximately 25 regularly scheduled advisory group meetings, most of which are televised and still available on reruns. If you choose to go to our website, you can still see those in their entirety. We also posted much information on the website that also is available. A lot of the submissions from the public are posted on the website as well. You can still go and see that, and I encourage you to do that. We dialogue with Kansas Cityans during the regular public meetings. In addition, we held 4 citizen town halls in the evening in all parts of the city, and those were attended by several hundred interested citizens who either use the airport or originally were fearful they might be asked to pay for it in some fashion with taxes or whatever, and it turned out to be unfounded. We consulted with a lot of key stakeholders that we identified in the process, including city council members, other elected officials, representatives of the airlines, the aviation department, the FAA, the business and civic leaders who represented hundreds of local businesses. We also heard from the Kansas City Area Development Council and the Convention Visitors Association. So we felt like we really touched a lot of the stakeholders.
We toured KCI and got at the back of the house firsthand, in-depth understanding of what is involved in operating an airport. As we became more aware of how airports operate, as we traveled, we were all critics and learners in how other airports are operating relative to ours and what's not working. With funding from the city, we hired an independent consultant, Frask and Associates, who has been invaluable and provided critical knowledge for us and benchmarked 20 at least comparable airports as a part of our process, and helped us understand the 50 concepts that have been studied by the aviation department and their consultants over the last 20 years. This is a really complex issue, and as a result, we developed over a period of months 32 key performance indicators that we have used to evaluate these various options moving forward. I'm going to touch on them briefly, and we'll show you a chart that outlines all the detail and their aspects. But the first of those was affordability. Future solutions need to be economical, affordable, and maximize the cost-benefit investment of the city. It includes not only the initial capital outlay, but operations and maintenance, and the potential for future capital expenditures over the next 4 or 5 decades. Convenience was the most critical aspect of our community in terms of how they relate to this airport. And so that became high on the list of the key performance indicators. Adaptability and flexibility. The ultimate solution for the terminals needs to ensure the ability to meet the long-term future needs and demands. An impact on favorable user experience. Many people that we listen to We're concerned about the fact that KCI is the first and last impression of our city. And there is a real interest in being sure that we see this gateway experience opportunity as important to the ultimate solution. And finally, constructability, minimizing the extent and duration of disruption for both we as passengers and the airlines during the construction, and minimizing the cost. Now I'd like to turn it back to Dave to go over some of these additional lessons we learned.
What did we hear from the stakeholders with whom we talked? Well, from the individuals that operate the airport, we heard that it's important to recognize the current necessity to rehabilitate the terminals in some fashion, while at the same time you're doing that, improve and expand the terminals to maximize flexibility and adaptability, improve operational efficiency, and customer service and amenities. The airport currently has many operational deficiencies, but it's also on the low end of what the airlines are contributing in terms of their fees they're paying. The recent city airline agreement with the airlines evidences the airline's willingness to consider increasing its funding to the airport. The airlines were most concerned about any terminal development should be affordable so as to avoid any disincentive for the airlines to continue to maintain KCI's current air service levels. It should also enhance the airline's capability to serve the passengers that use the airport. We heard from the passengers and the general public. They want to maintain Kansas City's overall convenience and make sure there's no tax increases associated with anything done at the airport. While there is attachment to historical character of the airport terminals, many others felt that KCI lacks the modern conveniences beyond security that other newer airports offer today. The business community told us that we need to make sure that we improve the gateway image of the airport where at all possible and improve amenities, including secured concessions, customer convenience such as power and technology, that would position business to be competitive with other peer cities in attracting new business relocation and also enhance employee retention. From the FAA and the TSA, the new terminal development should provide safety and security to its passengers and provide adaptability and flexibility to respond to rapidly changing needs in the future. The TSA indicated they expect no drop-off in time through security no matter what airport configuration is up there. And so now I'd like to turn it back over to Bob.
So it's hard for me to acknowledge this because I worked on the design of KCI, but the terminals are now 42 years old, and they're showing significant signs of wear and tear, and or they're outdated in certain areas that will require major investment or repair in the future. Due to physical constraints on the air side and land side, it's not possible to further expand and widen the terminals to accommodate all these additional secured spaces and consolidating checkpoints without a major expansion. Multiple terminals often result in redundant and inefficient operation, not to mention confusing our visitors. And finally, the constrained short-term parking with limited ability for expansion to accommodate need, and particularly at Terminal B, has been a key issue.
To reiterate what the mayor said, the users of the airport, which are the airlines, the other tenants, and the passengers, pay for the cost of operating and maintaining the airport, not the taxpayers or Kansas City voters. The funds expended at the airport are not at the expense of any other Kansas City projects or general obligation debt capacity. And the process of planning and undertaking airport capital improvements, from preliminary assessment to the approval and ultimately through the construction phases, takes many years. And thus it's timely now to address the airport's needs before unanticipated adverse events occur. Kansas City did score quite high on the recent J.D. Power survey in 2010 for convenient airports. And when we compared it to its peers of all similar-sized airports, it was ranked 5th behind the following airports who scored higher: Indianapolis, Fort Myers, Austin, and Jacksonville, of which two of those, Indianapolis and Fort Myers, were relatively new terminals. So we learned that even terminals that go through extensive change can be more convenient than Kansas City. We grouped all of the different terminal designs, specific designs, into 3 groupings. I won't go through the detailed 3 groupings now. They'll be posted on the board we're about to show you. But we thought rather than define a specific design, we would group in concept the 3 different airport types of concepts. And now we would like to show you how our group rated the 3 alternative concepts that have been well defined publicly, how they rated these different airport concepts in terms of key performance indicators. The first column on the left is alternative number 1, which is just take the existing terminals and refurbish them and remodernize them, but they still say separate terminals. The middle column is combining 2 or 3 terminals into a completely secure complex. And the third column on the right is a new terminal. Using the colors red, yellow, green, green is good. And green is the most compelling as to how all of our advisory group members scored those 3 alternative airport concepts. And you can almost see down throughout the entire listing of our key performance indicators how our group scored those different alternatives. And this serves as the detailed background rationalization to the vote that we're now going to announce. And we put up here the ballot. This is the ballot that each of the advisory group members completed. We had 100% of our advisory group members vote on these questions. And when I read the vote tally for each of the questions, Bob is going to write in the final results. If everyone voted on a particular line, the numbers would add up to 24. There are a couple of places where a member or 2 abstained, and so there'll be less than a total of 24 votes. But that was only happened in a couple of places. So first, on the question in response to the mayor's charge, is KCI, as it is configured currently, the best airport for residents and visitors of Kansas City? The consensus of our advisory group is 21 members voted no. 21 voted no, 1 member voted yes. So that was rather compelling. On the question number 2, are you satisfied that the key performance indicators represent the Airport Terminal Advisory's best collective judgment of how to compare the criteria between the terminal alternatives? Under answering yes were 23 advisory group members, with 1 member voting no. So I think we captured the best key performance indicators to grade various alternatives. On the third question, has the Airport Terminal Advisory Group identified the appropriate key stakeholders, and has the advisory group adequately solicited input from these stakeholders? The answer, yes, was responded by 22 advisory group members. 2 members voted no. Number 4, does the Airport Terminal Advisory Group have enough information to recommend an optimal airport concept from one of the 3 alternative grouping options? Now understand, this is just talking about the concept, not particular airport design, just the concept. Those answering yes numbered 18. Those answering no, 6. We think the majority of that shift relates to wanting to make sure that we had adequate costing information, which we have said was really detailed costing was beyond the scope of our mission statement right now because it would take a detailed design to determine the detailed cost. Number 5, on the suggestion of vote of which alternative our group would recommend, alternative number 1 received 0 votes. Alternative 2, yeah, I'm on 5.
Question 2 was not on the ballot.
Oh, you got a. Okay. 8. Yeah. Ugh. Okay. Okay. Question number 8. This is a different board, Bob.
This is an obsolete ballot that we revised before the final ballots were returned yesterday. So everyone voted on a different ballot than was printed large scale. We knew we wouldn't have the scores until late last night, but we didn't apparently provide the correct large scale to be
Okay. Well,
discharged. So let's go to...
Take that down. That's not... Okay. I apologize for that. What Bob had. Okay. On the question of which of the 3 alternatives our group is going to recommend, alternative 1 got 0 votes, alternative 2 got 3 votes, alternative 3 received 19 votes. Our group overwhelmingly recommends alternative 3 as subject to final cost determination as the optimal airport concept. And the last question we ask our members is it acceptable to you for the co-chairs to author the final report that will be submitted? And 22 of our members said yes, and 2 members said no. So again, we will author the final report. Apologize for that snafu, Bob.
Me too.
Okay, so I think our group has spoken. We have a large consensus to recommend alternative number 3, and the details of our recommendation and the rationale will be in our written report. But those are my final comments. Bob?
First of all, I want to make sure that the media knows that we'll be distributing electronic versions of both of these charts. I'm not sure whether it's the first or second version, but we'll be distributing versions of both of these charts to you as soon as we can. And it's striking that the do nothing option did not prevail when I thought at the beginning that was the way most people were articulating their thoughts. With all that being said, and having heard all that you've heard, we'll end the press conference. I want to again thank each and every one of the people who spent time from their families, their jobs, wherever they could have been otherwise, to come and do something for the city. And we'll be available to take your questions at this point. Any questions?
Mayor, what's next?
What's next will be something, thank you, Mike, will be something that the council will weigh in on very heavily in terms of shaping a program or a function to go forward to start negotiating with the airlines to see what their thoughts are. As we get to a point where we're starting to talk concretely about what their issues are and what thoughts come out of those conversations, we'll start looking at those necessary studies of engineering, design, etc., to determine cost factors, and then using all of that information, including the cost of building, maintaining, and going forward, a decision will be made as to what we want to recommend to the voters to approve.
And when do you anticipate, and it goes to Florida, when voters might get something like that? Obviously, it's not going to be me.
I have been notoriously bad at articulating the amount of time that it takes for a commission or something to happen. So I'm going to say, frankly, that I would not suspect that we would be ready to go for at least another year, and perhaps 18 months or so is my guess, something in that neighborhood.
Mayor, you have mentioned the fact, or others have mentioned the fact that this will not impact taxpayers, but it will impact in some way to the customers of the airlines. And they indicated that as well. Can you elaborate on that? Because either way, somebody's going to have to pay, and it's going to be the passengers.
Well, yes, that's obviously true, or the airlines. Those are two possibilities, but I don't have any information on that. I'm sure that the members of the commission and the chairs would have more and better information than I do in terms of numbers and those things. I did not sit through any of those meetings, so I think your best source of information on this location would be the people who actually looked at it closely.
The follow-up question to that is that Southwest Airlines, which is one of the largest airlines there, opposed this as well. They opposed a new airport.
Well, I don't think that that's necessarily true, and I think you ought to wait and see what Southwest Airlines says now that they have all the information. I don't think that that is their current position. I don't think they've taken a position other than they are willing to work with us to reach a conclusion that makes sense. Nobody has said at this point that they are totally against anything except doing nothing or some other version. So I'll let Southwest Airlines speak for itself, but I don't think that's an accurate representation of their state of mind.
So is Kansas City going to move ahead with the $1.2 billion plan that Mark Van Lowe pitched last year, the same single terminal multi-story plan that we saw last year?
I think that we've been answering that question in the negative for some time now. What we are talking about is taking the recommendations of this commission, working with council, the airlines, and everybody else that we need to in order to determine what course to pursue. It is clear from the work that they've done that they think that there is a better reason to consider a new terminal. What the cost of that terminal is, I have no idea. All I can tell you is that we're going to take the information that they've worked hard to gather and the recommendations and do what we need to do in order to reach some determinations. And when we know a cost that we're comfortable in putting out in the public, we'll certainly do that. Anything else?
Has the city borrowed from the aviation department funds in the past?
What?
Has the city borrowed from aviation funds in the past?
You might need to talk to the manager there. He's been here a lot longer than me. So you can chat with city manager on that issue. Anything else? Yes.
Will the process be public between the airlines, the aviation department, and the city? Will journalists be able to attend?
Well, it depends on what it is. Some things may be, some things may not be. I don't know. We haven't decided what the process is going to be yet, so it's going to be kind of hard to say exactly how it'll work. I'll tell you, though, that any time that we have a committee of council, all of those meetings are public, and there has always been a history of transparency with this council. So I'm sure that there will be meetings that will be open to the public. I'm sure that there will be meetings at a bar that may not. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
For those who believe, or for those who say a new single terminal is being rammed down their throats, do you believe this process shows there may be more support for a single terminal among the community than the vocal opposition?
I think that the process shows that 24 people who I had no idea of what their position was on the airport, except for Mr. Coster. I knew exactly what his position was on the airport. He had a website and the whole thing, and he's been very good, and I think very sporting in coming to join us when we met, and I asked him specifically because I knew he was an extremely vocal opponent, and he thought that maybe we were trying to sneak something past. I invited him into the tent so that he could see for himself. So I think perhaps your best answer might come from him. We may not agree on the ultimate outcome, but I would be very surprised if he disagreed with the process and that somehow this was being rammed down somebody's throat. Anybody else? And what news service are you with? Go ahead. What's up, man? You know, we are so far away from labor. At this point, we haven't even decided to build anything. And until we decide to build something, we're not going to be engaged in talking about the details of labor issues. That's a long way down the line. First thing that we have to do is figure out, what do we do with this data, this information, these recommendations? What are our options? What are the costs? And then as we make those determinations, we will go through the normal processes that we always go through in the city to ensure that we do the best job that we can of ensuring fair labor divisions and that people have access to jobs. That's always going to be our approach. We're always going to do that regardless of whether we're building a house or an airport. But right now, dude, I have no idea what we're going to do with that issue until we get closer.
But it's true, voters will have to approve any proposal to build a new terminal.
Voters will have an opportunity to vote, yes.
Meaning they will have to approve it?
Well, I'm assuming if we're going to take a vote, whoever gets the winning number will approve the end project, yes. Anything else?
What was your reaction to the TSA's testimony before this board regarding safety, regarding security with the current design?
I didn't have any reaction because I didn't spend any time listening to it. I didn't see it, didn't hear it, read a quote in the paper, and I know the quotes in the paper are not always in full context. So I did not have a reaction to it. I looked at it as for exactly what it was, part and parcel of the information and data that this group was supposed to gather. They did, and then they are in a much better position to evaluate that particular response from TSA than I am. I have not read the report. They did all of that work. I think you'd be better off asking them, because the only thing I know was what was written in the newspaper, and that certainly did not tell me enough to form a solid opinion.
Maybe you plan to, at some point, either endorse or not endorse the option they're recommending?
I plan to look at the information and the data that they've supplied and work with the council and the airports and the airline and figure out what is the best thing for us to do. And then when we reach that decision as a collective unit, then I will endorse it if I believe in it. If I don't, I won't. But at this point, I'm sitting here waiting for council and everybody else to weigh in on how we're going to proceed in depth, and then I'll participate in that process with an open mind.